So let's say you are in a third-person sample project in Unreal Engine 5 and you want to add sound effects whenever you walk around, for example, in this case. Because you can see the characters walking around, having footsteps, but there's no sound effects playing currently. We can do this by just finding the one that you have currently. So when I open up the third-person character blueprint, I can see that here in animation, there is an animation blueprint in a class. When I follow this asset reference, we can go to the Quinn animation blueprint. And in here it's currently empty. But what we can do is then find the animation itself. So we probably want to do the animation sequence for walking or sequence for running. Let's do running in this case because it's more likely to occur. And then we find within this animation sequence the steps themselves. So in here, for example, here we hit the ground. We want to add a notified track, a new one basically, to make it easy to organize. We can name it anything we want, so we can just use SFX for example for sound effects. It's not used anywhere, but just for your own organization. Then add notify. Type in new notify. In this case, we can name it anything we want, but we will use it in the blueprint, so make it something you can remember. We can do run, forward, footstep, for example. And then we have to copy and paste this every time in the sequence itself. So here again, you can label already using these one of the track labels in the first track basically. So it's easy to place them here, around, and one more already. Last one. Around here, one, into here. Okay. So when I play it, you kind of see that it matches up basically. Maybe we can just put it in the same line. Okay, so then save this. Go to the animation blueprint that this asset is used for. So in here, in the event graph itself, we can type in the name that you just gave for this notification. So we can type in run, forward, footstep, and now we can use this notification that's going to play every time in an animation sequence to play a sound at the location, for example, of the character in this case, because that's pretty ideal. And then keep in mind that also the sound effect will be played towards the camera, if that makes sense. So if it's far away from the camera, it won't play. But in this case, it should be fine with the third-person character. We can just do play sound at location. And I can kind of show you two ways to do this. Of course, because we have one player character that's local, we can just do get player character. There we go, get player character. Then get the world location of the mesh, which is fine. You can probably do any component really, but this is probably the easiest one. Another way to do is from the cat player character, we can get their mesh in this case as well, and then get bone transform. And since we know that we are in the third person character, we can go to the skeleton mesh asset in the mesh, and if you go here, open it up, you can find all the bones. And it doesn't really matter that much because the asset is still going to be played at the location of the character, the sound effect essentially. But we can go, for example, to foot. So foot left makes a small difference, I guess, but we can in this case do foot L, which is the name of the bone, and compile and save. And the transform is going to be world space, so world space transform world, and you can break it up, split struct pin, and just use the location. That's all we need, right? And it's basically the same result, but a little bit more precise if it's going to be useful for your project, for your game. And then in a sound, we can do a sound effect we want. I already imported a sound effect called footstep, so I'm just going to play that, sound like this, and then drag it in to execute. And then when we save it, just add a comment, sound effects. You can also call it notifications or something like that, but just is fine. And then now when we run while playing, we should hear it. There we go. That's pretty good. However, it's the same for animation montages. So if you have a montage here, you can just make one, for example, as well. Let's say you have run forward, create an animation montage to show you, and we'll name it am_run forward. And then here it's the same. So you have the timeline, and in here you just add a notify track, call it anything you want, and then just in here add notify, new notify, because you want to have it a new kind of sound, or play sound in this case. You can also do that, and that's gonna do a similar effect, but at the location, let's say, of the current asset. So it's not gonna be precise, if that makes sense. So we can do footstep as well, footstep here, right? And then play or save. And then when you play, you would have the same effect essentially, but it will be further away. And another more easy way to play sound effects at the animation sequence, we can just delete, in this case, the events that we have added. It's just use an existing event type, notify, and it's going to be play sound, and then you can just place them at the same location. Put in the sound wave you want to play. Again, recommend sound waves or meta sounds instead of sound cues because you need more assets, but if you already have them, it's also fine. But I imported this one as a sound wave called footstep, and I'll just paste it here again, and for the right foot, and then the left foot, and again here, and at the end as well, because I know that this one we saw before. So when it plays, you can now hear the sounds already in the timeline, which is great. And then it's going to be the same for the game. So when you're in game, you hear it as well. See, there we go, which is good. However, you cannot specify the location, right? It's going to be the default location, and that's going to be easier, but not as good or precise, depending on what you want for your game. And the last thing, if you make a animation montage, so in this case, animation montage, run forward, it's going to be the same. So you have the same functionality here. If you add a notified track, you can call it anywhere, anything, SFX for example here again, and then add notify, you can do play sound, which will also give you the sample of the preview, I guess, in the timeline, which is great, or just a new notify, and then give it another name, and then in the animation blueprint, you can do the same as here, basically. So it depends on what asset you use, but definitely the functionality is the same in the end. Anyway, that's how you get sound effects playing for your animation. It's quite quick and easy. And if you have any more questions, just let me know in the comments below.